What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with another Pokemon video. Today we're going to be ranking the Pokemon starters. I've been asked my opinion so many times, and some of you guys know where we fall on some starters, especially over the course of our various Nuzlocke series that we've done, but I've been wanting to do this for a while anyways. I've had people ask me about it in the past, and I figure let's just go ahead and get it done and over with. So we're going to be going down the line from Gen 1 to Gen 9 in Pokedex order just to make things a bit easier. So starting with Bulbasaur, we're going to have to move Bulbasaur just up to S tier. And I mean, that may be controversial for some people, especially some Gen 1 purists, but I absolutely love Bulbasaur. Ash's Bulbasaur was one of the coolest Pokemon he had in all of Kanto. And even though it didn't get to evolve, Bulbasaur is just a great Pokemon on its own. Not even counting the fact that it just makes playing through Gen 1 so freaking easy. Next up is Charmander, and I gotta be honest, part of me wants to put Charmander in A, because look at that, he matches the orange so nicely. But, I mean, aside from the fact that I'm gonna probably have people just bombarding me in the comments about how we didn't have Charmander in S rank, I feel like Charmander actually deserves S rank. I loved Charmander in the early days, and it really wasn't even until we got Megas that I started to really have issues with Charmander. And even then, it wasn't Charmander, it was specifically Charizard. Because you have those people that say Charmander's the best, and it's like, well, he's the worst one to take through Gen 1. He's the worst as far as competitive play. Like, he's just not good. And then Gen 6 is where they went over the handle. You had a Charizard EX, GX, whatever in every set, and Charizard got 2 Megas, and they were like, we're gonna finally make him a dragon. So, but this isn't about Charizard. This is about Charmander, and I like Charmander. Then, for those of you that know me, up next we got Squirtle. Squirtle's going in S tier, and this is going to be one of those things that anybody who's watching this video and started in like Gen 7, obviously, you're a lot younger than I am, so you're a little more naive, and you just didn't grow up with Pokemon from the beginning. But Squirtle, I mean, really all of starters belong in S tier. Squirtle he's that perfect shade of blue, he's adorable, he's a freaking turtle, and, I mean, he evolves into a giant turtle with cannons. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Now we're going on to Gen 2, and this is where we're going to really upset some people. And I'll be honest, I don't care. I'm putting Chikorita in S tier. We're not just... This isn't about competitive, and this isn't about movesets and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're right. You can get a Bellsprout at the fucking beginning of Gen 2. You can get a Hoppip, too. That's great. Chikorita is better. Hoppip has nothing but speed. And Bellsprout is just kind of underwhelming in and of itself. But as an actual just design, Chikorita is just, it's adorable, it's great. Chikorita was my first starter in Gen 2 because even though I started with Squirtle, I became a Bulbasaur fan by the time Gen 2 came out. And Chikorita was awesome. And so I went with Chikorita because I was a Bulbasaur trainer. You can hate on it as far as competitive. Yeah, there are better grass-type Pokemon, but there are also better water types than Squirtle. There are better grass types than Bulbasaur. It doesn't make it a bad Pokemon just because there's a better Pokemon than it. And design-wise, I just think they're awesome. They're little dinosaurs. Then next up we have Cyndaquil, which is my personal number 2 favorite starter, tied with Squirtle. And Cyndaquil's great. Cyndaquil is by far the most favored Gen 2 starter, and for good reason. It's adorable, it's pretty cool in just as a Pokemon. it evolves into a cooler version of itself twice. And Typhlosion, by the end of its evolution, has the exact same stats as Charizard. It just doesn't have that pesky flying type to make it weaker to more shit. Then lastly, as part of Gen 2, we have Totodile, again going in S tier. Now again, this is really controversial, and I understand this, because all we've done is put Pokemon in S tier. But the thing is, it's partially nostalgia, and that's okay. But these are Pokemon that I absolutely love, and while I'm not super big on Totodile's middle and final forms, Totodile in itself is just, it's a perfect Pokemon. He's just this cool little goofy blue crocodile, and would he have the same appeal if Totodile wasn't just this complete goofball every time we see it in the anime, no matter who has the Totodile? Maybe. But as a Pokemon itself, Totodile is just absolutely perfect. Now we're coming into Gen 3, and no matter what generation it is, someone thinks it's the worst and someone thinks it's the best. Gen 3 got me back into Pokemon with Pokemon Emerald, and so it's got a special place in my heart. Trico, I think, I want to say, is Trico going to be our first A tier? I think, I honestly think Trico goes in A tier, or S tier. Trico is really just this, especially in the anime, Ash's Trico has this kind of, like, the cool guy persona. You know, kind of like, it's like his Bulbasaur. It's like if he rebooted his team, and, I mean, obviously he needed a grass type. It's a grass starter. But it had the same kind of, like, cool guy personality. He's a little gecko. Lizards are just cool. And I think he deserves his place in S tier. Torchic, on the other hand, is a Pokemon that I feel like I'm gonna hurt some feelings here, but I don't like Torchic that much. I don't hate it, so it's gonna go in the B tier, and this looks like a really fucking weird tier list. And it just might, you know what? If people hate on me, I'll just blame it on the lack of sleep. I don't dislike Torchic, but I don't necessarily like Torchic. The anime did kind of, you gotta also remember too, I started with Gen 1. So I watched all the way up, growing up, and playing the games, and collecting the cards. Torchic's personality was just annoying. I didn't really like it. And it's just this little chicken with no arms, or wings for that matter. It's just kind of awkward. I love Blaziken, but Torchic is just not my cup of tea. Now we're coming up to one of the most controversial Pokemon of all time, depending on how old you are with the memes. But we're coming up on Mudkip here. And Mudkip, I gotta say, I gotta put it in S tier. Again, it's just this adorable little blue fuck. It's got the little orange fins on the side. It's just, Mudkip is a great Pokemon. If we're ignoring the do you like Mudkip crap, I liked Mudkip. He was great. He was my first Gen 3 starter. I picked him. It wasn't even a contest between Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip. Not even a contest. I absolutely loved Mudkip. Now, his middle form is another thing altogether, but we'll discuss that at another time. I almost feel like I want to move Trico down to A tier, but I'm kind of afraid. I'm afraid of the repercussions that will bring. I've never used Trico. You know what? I'm going to bring Trico down to A tier, and I'm just going to have to deal with the consequences of that decision. But just because there's got to be something here. Now we're going on to Gen 4, which is another highly argued. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up. Every generation has people that hate it. Every generation has people that will die on that hill. And I think Turtwig deserves to be on the A hill. I said A hill, not A hole. I like Turtwig. He's a cool little turtle Pokemon, which I love turtles. And he turns into a giant fucking turtle. Now again, this is only about the first forms. And I do like Turtwig. I like the first form. Turtwig was almost my choice when Diamond and Pearl came out. Almost. Now, coming down to Chimchar, this is one that I know is it's gonna upset a lot of people, and I'm sorry, I don't like Chimchar. Now, granted, we're not gonna talk about the evolutions, but Chimchar in and of itself, I just don't like its design. Okay, cool, it's got the little fire tail to you know, kind of be like, oh, it looks like kind of like Charmander. I'm not a big monkey fan. Like, I didn't like Apom really in Gen 2 either. Like, I don't know. There's just something about their designs I just don't care for. And Chimchar in Gen 4 in the Diamond and Pearl series was just a little shit. And I just couldn't fucking stand it. Now we're moving on to the final Pokemon, and it's Piplup. And this adorable little penguin is going straight to S tier. Piplup is a fucking adorable little shit. I love this thing. Now, if we ignore Piplup's personalities in the anime, it's perfect. If we're gonna go off of Dawn's Piplup, or even the Piplup from Pokemon Journeys, it's going down to like an F tier. But just based off its design, I love it. I like penguins. Again, it's a water type. It's blue, and it's freaking adorable. It was my first starter in Gen 4, and I do not ever regret that decision. Now we're moving on to Gen 5, and we have Snivy here, and I gotta say, I liked Snivy. Snivy is going to go in A tier. He wasn't bad. I didn't really have much to go off of. I did not watch... I stopped watching Pokemon, the anime, when Gen 5 came out. Because they were like, well, okay, Brock... I don't think Brock was tagging along at that point. I think it was like, you had the grass gym leader, you had some kid, and it was weird. So I didn't watch none of that. So I don't know how Snivy acted in the anime, but I liked it in the game. It had a cool design at first. And so, yeah, it's overall, it's not a terrible Pokemon. Up next, we've got Tepig, which, I mean, I don't dislike fire starters. You couldn't tell based on my list. But I actually like Tepig's design as a starter. Its base form is just this adorable little fire pig. It's cute. The orange and the black is really nice. The colors contrast really well. And I think it's a cute-ass little Pokemon. I almost chose Tepig as my starter for black and white. And I didn't do that. I think it was based off the final evolutions. But I believe I did pick Tepig in black and white too, because I was like, well, I picked Snivy. I may as well go with a different one this time. And then we've got Oshawott, and this one, I don't know what it is about this Pokemon, but I just don't like it. It's going down there with Chimchar in D tier. There was just something about it that I just didn't like it. I didn't like its evolutions either. It's hard to place. It doesn't look like a water type to me, and I mean, I like otters, but if that's what that thing is supposed to be, the design is not working for me. Now moving on to Generation 6, and we've got this one's Chespin, right? Yeah, he's going right here in D tier. I don't like him. Pretty much F tier is only going to be for Pokemon I absolutely hate. And I don't absolutely hate these three. If I had to choose one of them, I would choose Chimchar, but that's just because I actually really like Infernape. Chespin, I just don't like it. I don't even know what he's supposed to be, as far as what kind of animal he's based off of. And if I look at his evolutions, I still can't freaking tell, because they just get fucking fatter and weirder. He just looks like a little shit with this little green beanie, and I don't like him. Now we got Fennekin, which it's a little Firefox, and I don't dislike it. I mean, obviously it's no Vulpix. But for me, it kind of goes in B tier. It's not a bad design. It's cute for what it is, I suppose. But the yellow, like, I don't like yellow. The color just doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't look like a fire type to me. But it fails somewhere in its design for me for it being what it is. Then we got Froakie, and we're about to really hurt people's feelings again here, and I just don't like Froakie. I don't like Froakie. I like frogs. I like frog Pokemon. Froakie, I just don't like. Gen 6 was just not the generation for me. It had the least amount of Pokemon I liked. It was the first generation where I went, I don't like any of these starters. I would have been okay with Fennekin if Fennekin had stayed like a fox, evolved to a bigger fox, to still a bigger fox. If it had evolved kind of in the way like Cyndaquil did. But the fact that it stood up so early and then took on such a humanoid looking form, and then it just became a Harry Potter weird furry fanfic, I wasn't about it. Gen 6 was just, especially in terms of starters, was just the worst for me, and I'm sorry if you grew up and started with the DS era, but... Moving on to Gen 7, and we have Rowlet, and I almost want to put Rowlet in S tier, because I do like Rowlet, and I like owls. But... its design isn't enough for me to put it in S tier. It was my starter in Gen 7, which I will say Gen 7 is my most disliked starter because I played through Sun and Moon. I did a lot of competitive with Gen 7. I absolutely refused to touch Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It wasn't happening. I disliked Gen 7 that much to not want to play it again. But I did like Rowlet, and I did like his Decidueye. His final evolution was really great. If he was more green, he might have moved up to S tier, but for me, it's just A tier. Now, this is where it's going to be a little controversial, because I feel like... this is not Torracat, this is Litten. Litten, I love cats. Absolutely love cats. Probably one of, if not my favorite animals. And it started out so great. I think Litten deserves to be in A tier. I was considering placing it higher, but I'm not going to for reasons that will make apparent in another video. But Litten is great. It's a cat. It breathes fire. The black and red is a really nice color scheme. And overall, it's a decent looking Pokemon. I don't hate it at all. I just never used it because, well, it's final evolution. Again, it had Fennekin syndrome. Except it had a lot more promise. Now we're getting into... I don't know if this is... I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but I hate Popplio. Popplio is actually going down there in F tier, and I'm not sure if any of these in D tier should be in F tier. If I put Froakie in F tier, I would probably just get hundreds of dislikes. But I don't feel like I dislike it as much. Popplio just had the worst design out of all the ones we've gone through so far, in my opinion. And its evolutions just got worse and worse. And I'm sorry to the people that do like it, and to the people that designed it, but it's just not for me. Now we're coming into Gen 8, and we're going to touch back on another thing that is kind of controversial to something I said with Grookey, this little green grass monkey. And I don't hate it. It was my Gen 8 pick. And Gen 8, it was really the only one I really cared for. So you see where this is going to go. I'm going to go ahead and put Grookey in B tier. I don't dislike it, but I don't have any real attachments to it. It's not a terrible design. It's just a little green monkey, but the weird splashes of orange and brown in the places it's in are just kind of awkward to me. And again, I'm not a big fan on monkey Pokemon. I just don't know what it is about them. Their designs just don't come out right to me. Then up next we have Scorbunny, and again, this will probably make some people upset, but Scorbunny's got to go in D tier for me. Is there a point in there being a C tier? What really counts as C tier? What really is C tier? I almost feel like I could move Chimchar up. But other than that, I don't see... there's no other Pokemon I feel that neutrally about. Or that little negatively, perhaps. Scorbunny, its design was okay. But just as a rabbit, it's just so freaking weird. And just the whole, like, soccer thing. It's a fucking Pokemon. Like, it's a Pokemon. Soccer didn't exist, you know, thousands of years ago. And unless Scorbunny's a Pokemon that just appeared within the past couple hundred years, around the time that soccer was invented, it makes no fucking sense. Like, it's a fire type that doesn't do anything fire-related besides it kicks a rock that turns on fire. Now, that's just going from Pokemon Journeys, but still, it's just like, I just don't like its design. And it just, the theme is just, it just doesn't appeal to me. We'll just leave it at that. And speaking of things that don't appeal to me, is Sobble. Sobble's going down there in F tier, and I'm not even sorry about this one. Again with Poplio, it's such a shit design to me, and it's unlike Trico, for example, that is this, you know, cool gecko kind of Pokemon. Sobble is just not. Sobble, and by extension its two evolutions, are so fucking, like, anorexic thin to the point that like there's nothing. It's like a head and like stick figures. The designs I just don't like, and again the themes of the Pokemon I don't like. Not to mention Pokemon Journeys probably ruined Sobble for me. I didn't like its design either fucking way, but in Pokemon Journeys all it does is fucking cry, and its tears make other people and Pokemon around it cry. Like, what the hell? What kind of theme is that? Who thought, I want a Pokemon that cries and makes other people cry? It doesn't... Aside from the fact it doesn't appeal to me, is I don't see who it appealed to come up with that in the first place. Now we're moving on to the final generation, Generation 9, the newest in the lineup, with Sprigatito. And you guys know me and my love for cats. Sprigatito is going in A tier. I love its design, and again, Sprigatito had Fennekin syndrome, where it starts out as this adorable Pokemon, as it should be, and then for fucking reasons unknown, it just stood up on two legs and turned into like a half-human hybrid. It was like some weird homunculus created from alchemy that became half-human, and I don't understand why. Do I like its evolutions better than Fennekin's? I don't even honestly know. But I do like its base form better, and I was so upset when we found out that it stood up that I did not choose it as my starter. The starter I did choose, however, Fuecoco. Now, Fuecoco is a Pokemon that... It is the Pokemon I chose. But I don't know... It's such a derpy thing. It's such a derpy thing in a Totodile way. But it's not Totodile. It's not even close to Totodile. I almost want to put it in B tier because I don't like its design as much as I like Sprigatito, even though it is the Pokemon I choose over Sprigatito. Yeah, I feel like if it wasn't for the evolutions, I would choose Sprigatito every time. So unfortunately, Derp is going to sit here in B tier. I don't hate its design, and I see what they were going for, but it doesn't pull off that design as well as Totodile does. Still a great Pokemon overall, and I'll choose it every time over other starters. Which includes the last one, which is Donald Quaxley Duck here. And, you know, I think this is going to be the first and only Pokemon I put in C tier. I don't hate this Pokemon. I don't care for this Pokemon. It's not in a sense of, like, B tier is like, I like you a little bit. A tier is like, I like you. S tier is, like, mild, like, favorites. Which it's like, oh, well, there's 8 of them there, favorites. Well, there's over 1,000 Pokemon now, so 8 out of 1,000, I can still have those and have other favorites. Quaxly's just, it's like, I didn't like that it's, well, first of all, the top of its thing, it looks like a hat. Turns out it's actually, like, hair on a duck. What the fuck? Ducks have feathers. They don't have hair. So what is it brushing? I don't understand. It's just, it's weird. And it kind of comes off like this smug little shit, which is not a bad thing, but it's like, I don't like it enough that I'd use it. I'll choose Sprigatito over Quaxly in another playthrough, unless I just go Fuecoco again. So we did end up needing the C tier. The C tier was right there for Quaxly. It's kind of, if you look at it, it's like, water Pokemon, I either absolutely love them or I hate them. Grass and fire is kind of all over the place. There's more grass. There's a little bit more grass in the S and A tiers, and more fire in the B and D tiers. It's not really anything type related. It's just the designs just don't appeal to me. And, I mean, yes, it may be controversial that all 6 of Gen 1 and Gen 2 starters are in S tier, but that will change. Trust me, that will change in future tier lists. But as far as their base forms, the first 6 starters we got were absolutely perfect. Gen 3 and 4 were really good too. And from there, it just kind of fell off for me. But, I mean, that's kind of how it is. That's kind of how it is for us older players, because it's like, we grew up with so many of these Pokemon. We already have so many favorites, and it's like, Gen 8 comes along, or even Gen 9. It's like, let's look at that, and it's like, well, okay, you got Grass Cat, that's cool. I don't like it as much as Bulbasaur and Chikorita that I've had for years, and then there's this little derpy shit, and well, I get Charmander, and they don't stand up to what we've had and known and grown with for years. And so, these newer designs appeal to newer trainers, which is perfectly fine. This is just the designs that appeal most to me. But, yeah, that's going to do it for our Pokemon starter tier list. And I know we've hurt some feelings, we've offended some people, and I apologize, but hopefully we can have a more civilized discussion about it in the comments down below.